What happens when sharing a private joke about your marriage with friends turns into the moment you lose everything? Can a single careless confession unravel the life you built, leaving you with nothing but silence and a stack of legal documents? I thought I was in control until the day the envelope arrived. I never thought a simple meme would destroy my marriage. But as I sat in my empty apartment, staring at the divorce papers scattered across my coffee table, I realized that's exactly what happened. My name is Liraine Vesper, and I'm 32 years old. Or maybe I should say I was 32 when I made the biggest mistake of my life. It started innocently enough. I was bored at work, scrolling through my phone during lunch break, when I saw this hilarious meme about married life. You know the type, something about husbands being predictable and boring. It made me laugh because it reminded me so much of my husband Owen. Owen Vesper, 35, accountant extraordinaire, and the most methodical person I'd ever met. Everything had to be scheduled, planned, organized. Even our conversations felt scripted sometimes. He'd come home from work, ask about my day in the same tone every evening, eat dinner while reviewing spreadsheets, and fall asleep by 10:30 sharp. Don't get me wrong, Owen wasn't a bad husband. He paid the bills on time, never forgot our anniversary, and was great with our 7-year-old son Milo. But God, he was boring. And lately, I felt invisible in my own house. So when I saw that meme, something clicked. I screenshot it and added my own caption. When your husband schedules intimacy like a quarterly budget review and still manages to make it less exciting than filing taxes. Married life, Unar send help. I posted it in our friend group chat. 8 people, including Owen and me, mostly couples we'd known for years. The reactions were immediate and hilarious. Laughing emojis, OMG so true comments, and Sienna Tran, my closest friend in the group, responding with, "Girl, you're killing me, at least he schedules it." Mark forgets we're even married half the time. The attention felt amazing. For the first time in months, I felt seen, heard, validated, so I kept going. Update, he just asked if we could pencil in some quality time for Saturday, between grocery shopping and his mother's visit. I told him I'd check my calendar and get back to him. More laughs, more validation. Even Jake Morrison, who usually just lurked in the chat, responded with, "Dude, that's rough," followed by crying laughing emojis. I was on a roll. Over the next few days, I shared more funny stories about Owen's habits, how he organized his socks by color and day of the week, how he'd actually created a spreadsheet to track our monthly expenses down to the penny spent on coffee, how he'd once asked me to schedule a discussion about redecorating the living room. The group ate it up. I was the entertainment, the comic relief, the wife brave enough to tell the truth about married life. It felt intoxicating. What I didn't know was that Sarah Chen, Jake's wife, had been screenshotting our conversations and sharing them with her sister. And her sister happened to work with Owen's colleague at the accounting firm downtown. I found out on a Thursday evening when Owen came home looking different, not angry exactly, but distant in a way I'd never seen before. "Hey babe," I called from the kitchen, where I was heating up leftover pizza for dinner. "How was work?" He didn't answer immediately, which was unusual. Owen always answered immediately. He was standing in the doorway, still wearing his navy suit, briefcase in hand, just staring at me. "Owen, you okay?" He set his briefcase down carefully, methodically, the way he did everything. Then he pulled out his phone and held it up so I could see the screen. "Can you explain this to me?" My stomach dropped. On his phone screen were screenshots of our group chat, my memes, my jokes, my private comments about our marriage, our sex life, our personal moments that I'd turned into entertainment for our friends. "Owen, I can explain. Please do." His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it I'd never heard before. Something cold. "It was just jokes, honey. Everyone vents about their spouse sometimes. It's totally normal." Sarah's sister showed you these? That's actually pretty messed up of her to. So your defense is that someone else is wrong for showing me how my wife talks about me behind my back. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. You're overreacting. It's just harmless fun. Everyone in the group does it. Remember when Jake posted that thing about Sarah's shopping habits? Or when Mark complained about... Did Jake post details about their sex life? Did Mark share private conversations he'd had with his wife? Did anyone else create spreadsheet jokes about their spouse's personal habits? I opened my mouth to respond, but realized I didn't have an answer. Because no, they hadn't. My jokes had been different, more personal, more cruel. Owen, come on. You're being too sensitive about this. It's not like I said anything that wasn't true. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a mistake. Owen's face went completely blank. Too sensitive, he repeated slowly. About my wife sharing intimate details of our marriage with our friends for entertainment. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Liraine? Help me understand how turning our private life into memes for group chat laughs was supposed to make me feel loved and respected. I scrambled for the right words. Everyone needs to vent sometimes. Marriage is hard, and talking to friends about it is healthy. My therapist says, your therapist told you to mock your husband publicly. I wasn't mocking you, I was just sharing relatable content. It's what people do now. It's social media culture, Owen. Maybe if you spent less time with your spreadsheets and more time understanding how normal people communicate, you'd get it. The silence that followed was deafening. Owen stood there for a long moment, just looking at me. Then he nodded once, picked up his briefcase, and walked toward his study. Where are you going? We're not done talking about this. He paused at the doorway. Actually, I think we are. I'm going to review these screenshots more carefully. I want to make sure I understand the full scope of what you've shared about our marriage. Owen, don't be dramatic. It's really not that big of a deal. He turned back to look at me one more time. You're right, Liraine. It's not a big deal to you. That's exactly the problem. He closed the study door behind him, and I heard the lock click. That night, Owen didn't come to bed. I found him the next morning asleep on the couch in his study, still wearing his suit from the day before. When I tried to wake him up to talk, he simply got up, showered, and left for work without saying a word. I told myself he'd get over it. He was just being sensitive, like always. But as I got ready for work that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The way he'd looked at me, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time, made my stomach twist with an emotion I couldn't quite name. It would take me weeks to realize that emotion was fear. The weekend after Owen discovered the group chat, I decided to double down. If he was going to be dramatic about some harmless jokes, then maybe I needed to show him what real honesty looked like. Saturday morning, Owen was in his study with the door locked again. He'd been spending more and more time in there, claiming he had extra work projects to finish. I suspected he was just sulking, trying to punish me with the silent treatment. Fine. Two could play that game. I was meeting Sienna and a few other friends for brunch at Rosewood Cafe, our usual spot downtown. As I got dressed, I decided to document Owen's continued childish behavior for the group. Day 3 of the Silent Treatment Olympics, I typed into our group chat. Husband has barricaded himself in his office all weekend, apparently too wounded by the truth to function like an adult. Meanwhile, I'm expected to pretend everything is normal while he pouts. Married to a child, how send mimosas? The responses came quickly. Sienna. Girl, he's really milking this drama. You literally just told some jokes. Jake. Maybe give him some space to cool off. Sienna. Space? She made some memes, not burned down his office. He needs to grow up. Mark. I mean, if Lisa posted our private stuff, I'd probably be upset too. Sienna. That's different, Mark. You actually have a sense of humor. I screenshot this exchange and added, when your friends get it but your husband doesn't, maybe the problem isn't the jokes. Maybe the problem is being married to someone who can't laugh at himself. At brunch, the conversation naturally turned to my Owen situation. Sienna was my biggest supporter, encouraging me to stand my ground. "Honestly, Liraine, maybe this is a blessing in disguise," she said, sipping her third mimosa. "You've been complaining about feeling invisible in your marriage for months. At least now you know he's actually paying attention to what you say." "Right," I agreed, feeling validated. Like, sorry for being honest about my life. Sorry for having feelings about being neglected. "What does he expect?" asked Jessica, Sienna's cousin who'd joined us. "For you to just suffer in silence while he treats you like a roommate?" "Exactly. He schedules everything else in his life, but when it comes to actually connecting with his wife, suddenly he's too busy or too tired." I was getting worked up, and the mimosas weren't helping my filter. You know what the really pathetic part is? He's more upset about me telling the truth than he ever was about the actual problems in our marriage. Like, where was this passion when I was trying to get his attention for months? Sienna leaned forward conspiratorially. "Girl, you need to own this narrative. Don't let him make you feel guilty for being real about your marriage. Post about this conversation. Show him that other people understand what you're going through." So I did. Right there at brunch, I posted, "Currently having the most validating conversation with friends who actually listen when I talk. Funny how people who aren't married to me can show more interest in my feelings than my actual husband. Maybe the problem isn't my oversharing. Maybe the problem is being underloved." Brunch wisdom, yen, know your worth. The likes and supportive comments rolled in. I felt powerful, justified, seen. What I didn't notice was that Owen's sister Hannah had been added to the group chat 2 weeks earlier by her boyfriend Mark. And Hannah was not the type to stay quiet when her brother was being publicly humiliated. I found out about Hannah's presence in the chat Monday evening when Owen's mother Judith showed up at our front door unannounced. Judith Vesper was 62 years old and had never particularly liked me. She thought I was too dramatic, too social media obsessed, too modern for her methodical son. The feeling was mutual. "Hello, Liraine," she said when I opened the door. "I'd like to speak with you." "Owen's not home yet," I replied, not inviting her in. "He's working late." "I'm here to see you." Something in her tone made me step aside. Judith walked into our living room and sat down on the edge of our couch, her purse clutched tightly in her hands. "I understand you've been sharing details about your marriage on social media." My face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Hannah showed me the screenshots, all of them. My stomach dropped. Those were private conversations between friends. "Private?" Judith's voice was ice cold. "You posted details about my son's personal life for strangers to mock and laugh at. You turned your marriage into entertainment. How is that private?" "You don't understand. It's just how people communicate now. Everyone shares stuff about their relationships. It's normal." "Normal?" Judith stood up, and I'd never seen her look so angry. "Normal is discussing problems with your spouse directly. Normal is going to counseling if you're unhappy. Normal is treating the father of your child with basic respect and dignity." "I do respect Owen. You respect him so much that you told the internet he schedules sex like a business meeting. You respect him so much that you complained about his boring personality to anyone who would listen. You respect him so much that you're now claiming he doesn't love you enough." I felt tears starting to form. "You don't know what it's like being married to him. He's emotionally unavailable. He doesn't pay attention to me unless I'm literally falling apart. I've been trying to get his attention for months. So you decided to humiliate him publicly instead of talking to him like an adult." "I tried talking to him. He just gives me those blank stares and changes the subject. He's impossible to communicate with." Judith was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Owen has been talking to a lawyer." "What?" "He asked me to watch Milo next weekend while he meets with a divorce attorney. He wanted me to tell you so you could prepare yourself." The room started spinning. "He's not serious. He's just trying to scare me because his feelings got hurt." "Owen doesn't make threats, Liraine. You should know that about him by now. He makes plans. After Judith left, I immediately called Owen's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called his office, but his secretary said he'd left for the day. I tried texting him, but got no response. When he finally came home at nearly 9 p.m., I was waiting in the living room. "We need to talk," I said the moment he walked through the door. "I agree," he replied calmly. "But not tonight. I'm tired." "Your mother came by today. She said you're talking to a lawyer." Owen paused in the doorway, his briefcase still in his hand. "She wasn't supposed to tell you that yet." "Yet? Owen, what the hell is going on? You're talking about divorce because of some group chat messages." "I'm talking about divorce because my wife has spent months publicly humiliating me and then told me I was overreacting when I asked her to stop." "I didn't humiliate you. I made some jokes." "Jokes about our sex life, jokes about my personality, jokes about our private conversations, jokes about how much you apparently hate being married to me." His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it. "When does it stop being jokes and start being cruelty, Liraine?" I felt panic rising in my chest. "Owen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to hurt you. I was just venting, and it got out of hand. I'll delete everything. I'll apologize to the group. We can fix this." "Can we? Because this afternoon you posted about being underloved and how your friends show more interest in your feelings than your husband does. That was after our conversation Friday night, after you knew how much this hurt me. So tell me, how exactly are we going to fix the fact that you don't respect me enough to stop even when you know it's destroying our marriage?" I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came out. Because he was right. I had kept posting, even after seeing how much it hurt him. I'd told myself it was justified, that he was being too sensitive, that I deserved to vent to my friends. "I'll stop," I whispered. "I promise. No more posts, no more jokes. We can go to counseling. We can work on our communication." Owen looked at me for a long moment. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But Liraine, I need you to understand something. Trust, once broken, doesn't just magically repair itself because you promise to do better. You've shown me who you are when you think nobody's watching. And now I'm watching everything." He went upstairs to check on Milo, leaving me alone in the living room with the weight of his words settling over me like a suffocating blanket. That night, for the first time since we'd been married, Owen slept in the guest room. 2 weeks after Owen moved into the guest room, I was drowning in the silence of our house. He was polite but distant, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of his free time either with Milo or locked in his study. I felt like a ghost in my own life. That's when Callum Price started paying attention to me. Callum worked in our office's marketing department, 33, charming, with the kind of easy smile that made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. We'd always been friendly, but suddenly he was seeking me out during coffee breaks, asking about my weekend plans, complimenting my outfits. "You seem different lately," he said one Thursday afternoon as we stood by the coffee machine. "More, I don't know, independent. It's a good look on you." I felt a flutter in my stomach that I hadn't experienced in months. "Thanks. I guess I'm just figuring some things out." "Marriage stuff?" he asked, lowering his voice. "I couldn't help but notice you haven't been wearing your ring lately." I looked down at my bare left hand. I'd stopped wearing my wedding ring the week before, telling myself it was because Owen was being so cold and distant. If he wanted to act like we weren't married, fine. "It's complicated," I said. "It always is," Callum replied, his fingers brushing mine as he handed me a coffee stirrer. "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm a good listener. And I know a great little wine bar downtown if you need to get away from everything for a while." The invitation hung in the air between us. I knew I should say no, should walk away, should focus on fixing my marriage instead of entertaining fantasies about my coworker. But Owen's coldness had left me feeling so lonely, so invisible, so desperate for someone to see me as desirable. "That sounds nice," I heard myself saying. Maybe Friday after work? Callum's smile was brilliant. It's a date. Well, not a date, he added quickly. Just two friends grabbing drinks. But we both knew it wasn't just friends grabbing drinks. Friday evening, I texted Owen that I was having drinks with coworkers and would be home late. He responded with a simple okay and nothing else. The wine bar was intimate and dimly lit, the kind of place couples went for romantic evenings. Callum had chosen a corner table where we could talk privately, and within an hour, I felt more alive than I had in months. "You're so much more interesting than you let people see at work," he said, leaning closer across the table. "Your husband is an idiot if he doesn't appreciate what he has." "He's not an idiot," I said, though my defense of Owen felt half-hearted. "He's just practical. Everything is about schedules and budgets and 5-year plans. There's no spontaneity, no passion. Life's too short for that," Callum said, his hand covering mine on the table. "You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." The attention was intoxicating. For the first time in weeks, I felt beautiful, desired, interesting. Callum hung on every word, laughed at my stories, made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. We didn't do anything physical that night beyond holding hands, but the emotional connection was undeniable. I drove home feeling guilty but alive, conflicted but excited. The drinks became a weekly thing. Then, twice a week. Then, almost daily coffee breaks that stretched longer and longer. Callum and I started texting constantly. Good morning messages, funny memes, late-night conversations about our dreams and frustrations. I told myself it was just friendship, just someone who understood me better than my emotionally distant husband. But when Callum started calling me beautiful, when he told me I deserved better, when he said he couldn't stop thinking about me, I didn't pull away. 3 weeks into our friendship, Callum kissed me in the parking garage after work. I should have stopped it, should have remembered my marriage vows, should have thought about Milo and the life I'd built with Owen. Instead, I kissed him back. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he whispered against my lips. "We shouldn't," I said, but I didn't step away. "I know, but your husband doesn't appreciate you the way I do. When was the last time he made you feel beautiful? When was the last time he really saw you?" He was right. Owen barely looked at me anymore. Barely spoke to me beyond logistics about Milo's schedule or household tasks. I felt invisible in my own marriage while Callum made me feel like a goddess. The affair escalated quickly after that. Secret meetings during lunch breaks, stolen kisses in empty conference rooms, increasingly intimate text messages that I carefully deleted after reading. I convinced myself it wasn't really cheating because we hadn't slept together. It was just emotional support, just someone who cared about me when my husband clearly didn't. Owen had pushed me away with his coldness and silence. This was his fault as much as mine. But I wasn't as careful as I thought I was. The first sign of trouble came when our HR director, Patricia Williams, asked me to stay after a department meeting. "Liraine, I need to discuss something sensitive with you," she said, closing her office door. "There have been some concerns raised about your interactions with Callum Price." My heart started pounding. "What kind of concerns?" "Several employees have noticed that you two spend a lot of time together. There have been observations of physical contact that might be inappropriate for a workplace setting." "We're just friends," I said quickly. "We grab coffee sometimes. There's nothing inappropriate about that." Patricia pulled out a folder and opened it on her desk. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages between Callum and me. Not the most damning ones, but enough to show that our relationship was more than professional. "These were forwarded to me anonymously," she said. "I'm required to investigate any potential workplace harassment or inappropriate relationships." I stared at the messages, my face burning with embarrassment. Someone had been watching us, screenshotting our conversations, building a case against us. "This is a violation of privacy," I said. "Those are personal messages. Sent during work hours, on company devices, between two employees. That makes them company business. Patricia's voice was firm but not unkind. Liraine, I'm not here to judge your personal life, but I need to know if this relationship has affected your work performance or created a hostile environment for other employees. It hasn't. We've been completely professional at work. Patricia raised an eyebrow and pulled out another screenshot. This one showed Callum and me in what was clearly an intimate conversation in the break room, standing much closer than colleagues should. I'm going to need you to maintain appropriate boundaries with Mr. Price going forward, she said, and I strongly recommend you consider whether this situation is in your best professional and personal interests. That evening, I came home to find Owen sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a stack of papers beside him. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. How was work? He asked calmly. Fine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Just the usual. Anything interesting happen? I studied his face, looking for signs that he knew about HR's investigation. But Owen's expression was unreadable, as always. Not really. Why? Just curious. You've been working late a lot recently. New projects. Yeah, busy season, I lied. Owen nodded slowly. I see. Well, I'm sure your co-workers appreciate your dedication. There was something in the way he said co-workers that made me think he knew more than he was letting on, but before I could respond, he closed his laptop and gathered his papers. I'm going to check on Milo, he said, standing up. Oh, and Liraine. I'll be out of town this weekend. Business trip. Since when do you take business trips? Since I started taking on more responsibilities at work. I figured you wouldn't mind, since you've been so busy with your own projects. He left me standing in the kitchen, heart pounding, wondering exactly how much he knew and how long he'd been watching me dig my own grave. That night, I tried calling Callum to warn him about HR's investigation, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When I tried texting him, the messages showed as delivered but unread. For the first time since our affair began, I felt truly afraid. Monday morning, Callum avoided me completely. When I tried to approach him at the coffee machine, he mumbled something about being late for a meeting and hurried away. During lunch, I saw him eating with a group from his department, but when I walked by their table, he didn't even look up. By Wednesday, it was clear that he was ghosting me entirely. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Callum, who had told me I was amazing and beautiful and deserved so much better than my cold husband, had disappeared the moment there were consequences for our relationship. He'd gotten what he wanted, the thrill of pursuing a married woman, and now that it was complicated, he was done. I felt humiliated and angry. How dare he make me feel like I was special, and then abandon me when things got difficult? How dare he pursue me, and then act like I was some desperate housewife who'd thrown herself at him? In my hurt and frustration, I made another catastrophic mistake. I posted about it in our friend group chat. PSA, men who call you amazing and beautiful and tell you that you deserve better will ghost you the second there are actual consequences for their words. Apparently, I'm only worth the risk when the risk is zero. Men are trash. Lessons learned. The response was immediate. Sienna. Wait, what? Who are we talking about here? Jake. Liraine, are you okay? Mark. This sounds like there's more to the story. I realized I'd said too much, but I was too angry and hurt to care. Just dealing with the reality that some people are only interested in you when it's convenient and exciting. The moment it requires actual commitment or courage, they disappear. Sienna. Girl, call me. Now. But I didn't call Sienna. Instead, I kept typing, fueled by wine and self-pity. Funny how men will tell you everything you want to hear when they want something from you, but the second you actually need support, they vanish. At least my emotionally unavailable husband is consistently unavailable. False hope is so much worse than honest indifference. Jessica. Liraine, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing that hasn't been going on for months. Just finally seeing people's true colors. Turns out I'm surrounded by men who don't actually give a damn about me. Mark, hey, that's not fair. We all care about you. Do you? Because when I posted about problems in my marriage, everyone laughed and encouraged me to own my truth. But now that I'm dealing with the consequences of being honest about my feelings, where is everyone? The chat went quiet for several minutes. Then Jake posted, Liraine, I think you need to talk to someone. This doesn't sound like you. This is me. This is what I look like when I stop pretending everything is fine and start telling the truth about how lonely and invisible I feel. What I didn't know was that Hannah, Owen's sister, had been screenshotting everything again. And this time, she wasn't just sharing with family. Thursday evening, Owen came home with a manila folder and the same eerily calm expression he'd been wearing for weeks. We need to talk, he said, setting the folder on the kitchen counter. About what? About Callum Price. My heart stopped. I don't know what you mean. Owen opened the folder and pulled out printed copies of text messages, not just the ones HR had shown me, but others, more intimate ones. Messages where Callum called me beautiful, where I complained about feeling unloved in my marriage, where we made plans to meet for drinks. Where did you get these? I whispered. Does it matter? What matters is that my wife has been having an emotional affair with her coworker and then posting cryptic messages about it in our friend group chat. I felt the walls closing in around me. It wasn't an affair. We never slept together. Oh, well then, I guess that makes it okay, Owen said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You only shared intimate emotional connections with another man, planned secret meetings, kissed him in parking garages, and complained about our marriage to someone who was actively pursuing you. But since you didn't have sex, I should just get over it. How do you know about the parking garage? Owen pulled out another paper. This one was a printed email with photos attached. Security camera footage from our office building, showing Callum and me in what was clearly an intimate embrace. Your HR department sent this to all employees' spouses as part of their harassment investigation. Apparently, they wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the situation in case there were other incidents. I felt like I was going to vomit. Owen, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you decided to have an affair instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage? Can you explain why you posted about our private life for entertainment and then turned around and shared intimate details with another man? Can you explain why you told our friends that you're surrounded by men who don't care about you, including your husband, who has been working overtime to pay for this house, your car, your lifestyle, and our son's future? Tears were streaming down my face. I felt invisible. I felt like you didn't love me anymore. Callum made me feel beautiful and wanted and I made you feel safe and provided and loved in the way I know how to love. Owen's voice cracked slightly. But that wasn't enough for you. You needed drama and excitement and validation from strangers more than you needed the stable, committed love I was giving you every day. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you thanked me for working extra hours so you could afford your girls' trips with Sienna? When was the last time you acknowledged that I get up early every Saturday to make Milo pancakes so you can sleep in? When was the last time you noticed that I've been planning date nights for months, but you keep cancelling because you're too tired or too busy? I opened my mouth to argue, but realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done any of those things. I'd been so focused on what Owen wasn't giving me that I'd stopped seeing what he was. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I was lonely and confused, and I made terrible decisions. But we can fix this. We can go to counselling. We can work on our communication. Liraine, I've been asking you to go to counselling for 6 months. You kept saying you were too busy or that we didn't need it because all couples have problems. But you weren't too busy to meet Callum for drinks twice a week. The truth of that hit me like a slap. Owen had suggested counseling multiple times, and I'd brushed him off every single time. I'd told him he was being dramatic, that we just needed to communicate better on our own. "I'll do anything," I said desperately. "I'll quit my job. I'll delete all my social media. I'll cut off contact with everyone who encouraged this. Just please don't give up on us." Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I need time to think. I'm going to stay at my mother's this weekend. When I come back, we'll discuss next steps." Next steps? Whether this marriage can be saved, or whether we need to start talking about custody arrangements and asset division. He left that night with a suitcase, and Milo, who looked confused and scared, as Owen explained they were going to have a fun weekend at Grandma's house. I spent the weekend alone, replaying every moment of the past few months, finally understanding the full scope of what I'd destroyed. I'd betrayed my husband's trust, humiliated him publicly, had an emotional affair, and then blamed him for my own choices. By Sunday night, I was ready to do whatever it took to save my marriage, but when Owen came home Monday evening, I could tell from his expression that it was already too late. Owen returned from his mother's house with a different energy entirely. Gone was the hurt, wounded man I'd been living with for weeks. In his place was someone I barely recognized, calm, focused, and terrifyingly methodical. "We need to discuss the future," he said, setting his briefcase down in the foyer. "But first, I need you to understand something. This conversation is not a negotiation. It's an explanation of decisions that have already been made." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've spent the weekend consulting with my attorney, my accountant, and my family. I've reviewed our financial situation, our custody options, and the legal requirements for dissolution of marriage in the state." Dissolution of marriage? The words felt foreign in my mouth. "Owen, you can't be serious. We can work this out." "Can we?" "Because I've been thinking about that possibility for weeks, and I keep coming back to the same question. How do you rebuild trust with someone who doesn't believe they've done anything wrong?" "I do believe I did something wrong. I told you I was sorry." Owen sat down across from me at our kitchen table and pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in his neat handwriting. "Let me read you something," he said. "These are direct quotes from your group chat posts over the past 2 months." My face burned as he read my own words back to me. Maybe the problem isn't my oversharing. Maybe the problem is being underloved. When your friends get it but your husband doesn't. At least my emotionally unavailable husband is consistently unavailable. "Do these sound like the words of someone who believes they did something wrong?" he asked. "Or do they sound like someone who believes their husband deserved to be betrayed and humiliated?" I was hurt and angry when I wrote those things. "You were hurt and angry because I found out about your affair and asked you to stop publicly mocking our marriage. Think about that, Liraine. You were angry at me for being hurt by your betrayal." I tried to find words to defend myself, but everything that came to mind sounded hollow and selfish. Owen continued reading from his legal pad. "Here's what I know for certain. You shared intimate details of our marriage with friends for entertainment. When I asked you to stop, you told me I was overreacting. You then began an emotional affair with a co-worker, which included physical contact and secret meetings. When that man abandoned you, you posted about it publicly, making it clear that your affair was common knowledge among our friends. Throughout all of this, you have consistently blamed me for your choices. I'm not finished." His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Here's what I've learned about myself. I can forgive betrayal. I can forgive public humiliation. I can even forgive infidelity. But I cannot forgive a complete lack of accountability. And I cannot rebuild a marriage with someone who sees my hurt as an inconvenience rather than a consequence of their actions." Tears were streaming down my face. "Owen, please. I know I handled this badly. I know I hurt you. But we have a son together. We have a life together. 7 years of marriage doesn't have to end because I made some terrible mistakes." "You're right. 7 years of marriage doesn't have to end because of mistakes. But it does have to end when those mistakes reveal fundamental incompatibilities in values and character. He pulled out another folder and set it on the table between us. These are the divorce papers. I'm filing for dissolution of marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences. I'm requesting joint custody of Milo, with primary residence remaining here, since this is his home and his school district. I'm requesting that we split assets according to state guidelines, with each of us keeping our individual retirement accounts and personal property. I stared at the papers, unable to process what I was seeing. You've already filed. I'll file tomorrow morning. I wanted to give you the courtesy of knowing first. Courtesy? I laughed bitterly. You call blindsiding me with divorce papers courtesy. I call it more consideration than you showed me when you decided to air our private life for public entertainment. The coldness in his voice was devastating. This wasn't the Owen I'd married, the gentle, patient man who'd spent years trying to make me happy. This was someone I'd created through my own cruelty and betrayal. What about counseling? I asked desperately. What about trying to work things out? Liraine, you refused counseling when our marriage was salvageable. You don't get to demand it now that you're facing consequences. So that's it? You're just going to throw away our entire relationship because I made some mistakes? Owen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but somehow more final. Do you know what the worst part of all this has been? It's not the affair. It's not even the public humiliation. It's the realization that the woman I married doesn't actually exist. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent 7 years believing I was married to someone who was fundamentally kind and loyal. Someone who might make mistakes, but would take responsibility for them. Someone who loved me enough to protect our relationship, even when she was angry or frustrated. He gestured to the papers on the table. But the woman who posted those memes, who had an affair, who blamed me for her own choices, that's not the woman I married. That's someone else entirely. And I can't stay married to someone I don't actually know. The finality in his voice broke something inside me. Owen, please. I'll be staying at my mother's until the paperwork is finalized. You can remain in the house with Milo during the week. I'll pick him up Friday evenings and return him Sunday nights. We'll work out holiday schedules through our attorneys. Attorneys? We need attorneys now. We needed honest communication, Liraine. Since that's apparently impossible, yes, we need attorneys. He stood up and headed toward the stairs. I'll pack some clothes and be out of your way within the hour. This is my way too, I called after him. This is my house, my life, my family. He paused at the bottom of the stairs and turned back to me one last time. No, Liraine, this was our life, but you traded it for likes and validation, and the attention of a man who didn't even respect you enough to stand by you when things got complicated. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. As I listened to him moving around upstairs, packing 7 years of marriage into a suitcase, I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just a husband, but a partner. Not just a marriage, but a future. Not just Owen's love, but his respect. And the worst part was knowing that I'd done it all to myself. The divorce moved fast because Owen came prepared. Assets catalogued, terms settled, every detail airtight. 6 weeks later, on a November Tuesday, the judge reviewed our agreement and ended our marriage with one sharp tap of the gavel. I tried to stop Owen in the hallway, hoping for a crack in his resolve, but he only said love without respect isn't enough, and accountability can't be optional. Afterward, Milo struggled, friends drifted, and Callum vanished like it had all been a game. Then I found old photos, quiet devotion I'd mistaken for neglect. Owen's final text arrived.